Welcome to Dish by RMU Culinary, a weekly installment where we show you delicious food. I'm Chef Rachel with the Institute of Culinary Arts at Robert Morris University in downtown Chicago. This week on Dish, we're going to make a chocolate cream cheese pie. So what we're going to start with is our graham cracker crust. So you can buy your graham crackers pre-ground, you can grind your own, really up to you, but it's a really simple recipe. So all you're going to need is your graham crackers. We're going to add some sugar into this, followed by our melted and cooled butter. So I already have some that's been melted and just kind of been sitting at room temperature for a couple minutes, just that way it's easier to work with. And you usually add most of your butter straight into there. So this isn't going to be super packable. It's enough where it'll hold itself in your pie plate, but you don't have to add a whole lot to it. If you want to change your crust, you can use different kinds inside the graham cracker. You can do a sweeter crust and pre-bake your pie shell in here and then just do the filling portion as well. But today we're going to show you with a graham cracker how this is going to look. So now that we have our crust made, you can kind of tell it's packable. It'll hold its shape, but it's still a little bit crumbly. So once the butter sets up with the cream cheese filling, it'll hold up a lot better when you go to cut and serve your pie. So what we're going to do is just add a couple handfuls in here. I don't want to overfill it too much with crust to start with because I don't want to have a super thick layer of crust and then just a little bit of filling on the inside of it. I want to have a nice balance of crust to filling. So I can always add more back in there, but what I'm going to do is just start gently pressing so I can get my corners in my pie plate and get that working up the sides. It's still packable, so you want to make sure that it's holding its shape where it is. And what I can do is go back across the front and press it in on the lip. You can tell, every once in a while you can tell where it's really thick, and you can just take a little bit off and readjust. Make sure you cover all of your plate so you don't have any holes from where the graham cracker is. So I'm just going to take a little bit off the sides that I see where there's a lot. Just need a little bit more. Okay. And I'm just going to go through on the center, give it a nice press on there so everything's held onto that part of the plate. Otherwise, that is all we need to do for our graham cracker crust. You have extra, you can reuse this a few different times if you want to in different crusts or different uses, just to kind of keep utilizing what you do have. Next, what we're going to do is go to our filling. So it's going to be a chocolate cream cheese filling. So what you want to make sure that you have for this is that your cream cheese has been sitting out at room temperature. You want to make sure that it's soft enough so it's creamy. You won't get cream cheese chunks in your pie. You want it nice and smooth and silky. And then what else we're going to add is some melted chocolate. So this is milk chocolate that we have over a double boiler. And all we're going to do is just kind of make sure it's melted all the way. You don't want this to be too hot either. You can get this where it's still super warm chocolate and you add it to your cream cheese and it'll shock and it'll basically make chocolate chips in your pie. So you want to be very careful as you're doing this that it has a couple minutes to kind of cool off. You can take it off your water bath and let it sit at room temperature. Just don't let it re-solidify either. If you want to make it with chocolate chips, go for it. You just kind of have a few of those that you can add in there as well. So I'm just going to stir it. As you stir, it's going to allow the cooler air to incorporate and make sure this is all smooth. So now this is ready. What we're going to do is add it to our cream cheese. So I had it mixing just for a little bit and make sure everything was nice and smooth. I'm going to scrape as much as the cream cheese as I can to the center of the bowl. So that way when I add the chocolate in, it's not going to just get some pieces of it. It's going to all immediately combine together in the mixer. And it has an even blend to it. This, I just have the paddle attachment on, so it's creaming the mixture together. We don't really need any air incorporated into it yet. So all we're going to do is, actually, we're going to take this off. It'll be a little bit easier to get the chocolate in. Is pour our chocolate straight in. You want to try and get as much as possible of the chocolate out of your bowl. You don't want to waste any of it. A lot of things that you want to try and use as much as possible in pastry because you don't want to leave any ingredients behind. So now that we have all of that in there, we're going to put it back on our mixer. We're just going to let it mix until it's nice and smooth. You can stop and scrape it down every so often just to make sure the bottom of the bowl is combined. Once you get it in with the cream cheese, the chocolate cools off typically pretty fast as well, so that's why you want to make sure it's not too hot as you're adding it in. So I'm just going to stop. And kind of scrape everything again. You really want to make sure too, if you're using your KitchenAid mixer, that you're scraping at the very bottom because there tends to be a little notch up there where it's raised compared to the rest of the bowl, and a lot of the ingredients will stick in there, so you'll get everything looks like it's together except for the last little bit because it got stuck at the bottom of the bowl. Just let this mix for a little bit longer. And our last ingredient we're going to add into here is a little bit of vanilla extract, just to kind of balance out all the flavors in there. All right, so now that this is nice and combined, what we're going to do is add a little bit of whipped cream in here. So it's kind of turning it into that French silk that a lot of people know of. So you're taking and lightening your base that you have of your cream cheese and chocolate with a little bit of whipped cream that is not sweetened. It doesn't have anything in there because the chocolate has enough that you don't need to add any more sugar into there. So all we're going to do is I have some whipped cream already. It went to a medium peak, so that way it has that Hershey Kiss look. When you lift the whisk out, it'll just fold over itself just ever so slightly. And what we're going to do is slowly fold in this mixture. So I'm just going to take a small portion of the whipped cream and add it into my cream cheese base. You don't want to add it all at once because you're going to knock all of your air out of your whipped cream. So you want to take it, and this is kind of your sacrificial part that you're adding in. You're going to mix it so that way the air can start to incorporate in there, the lighter ingredient versus the heavier base that you have. And so I want to get this mostly mixed in for this first round. And then after this, I can probably do this in 2 more batches and start lightening the rest of the cream cheese mixture. So as you're doing this, you are going to do some folding. So this is usually why rubber spatulas come in very handy in this point, is that I'm just taking this, and I don't want to stir it so I knock the air out. I'm going to just gently fold it over on top of itself to help hold that whipped cream in there. So you're taking it and folding it towards the center, making sure that everything is being combined. One of the things with pies that you're adding a whipped cream, or if you have whipped egg yolks that you're adding in as well, so you don't want to have the white streaks left in there. It looks like it didn't get combined all the way, or sometimes your guest is unsure of what it is. You just want to make sure that you're getting as much folded into there as possible without deflating your mixture. So I'm going to add my last batch of whipped cream in here, and so that is my goal, is not to have any of those white streaks, but I don't want to stir it too much where I start knocking all of the air out. All right, so since this is pretty much done, what we're going to allow it to do is the chocolate's going to help set the filling a little bit more. So we're going to put it into our pie pan and then put it in the refrigerator to set. So it'll probably take a good 20 minutes or so for it to set back up. There's no stabilizers in there, so no gelatin to kind of help hold the cream. Chocolate does that on its, by itself by basically resetting, and it'll harden on its own, so it'll be nice and fluffy so as you cut through it, and it'll hold its form. So we're just going to add in all of our filling. Kind of even it out just a little bit so that way it covers the entire pie plate. We will be going back at the very end and adding some whipped cream on top for our decorations as well. So if it's not perfectly smooth, totally fine. We're going to add some whipped cream on top once this chills and finish our garnishes. So we have our pie that's been chilling. It's ready to go. We can finish our garnishes on there. So what I've done is made a little bit of whipped cream, which is our whipped heavy cream, and a little bit of powdered sugar and vanilla. And I put it in a pastry bag with a star tip. So the star tip kind of has that jagged edge on there. And all I'm going to do is put a little bit of whipped cream as a garnish on the top of the pie, just to give us a little extra on the very top. So you can do any designs you want to do on here. I'm just doing what cake decorators would call a shell border, and I'm just kind of going around and covering the pie with that. You can do anything really on top of it, add different garnishes, different sauces to go with it as well. It just kind of depends on what you'd prefer to have on the top. So I'm just going to finish kind of going around. And then once you have your cake garnished, all we're going to do is add a little bit of shaved chocolate on top. I have a block of unsweetened chocolate that I'm going to shave on top of it, along with some white chocolate curls, just to kind of give it a little bit more depth on the top of the pie as well. And our last step will be to cut our slice for our dish, which will show you the trick to get a nice clean pie slice out. So there is our whipped cream on top. I'm just going to take a little bit of this unsweetened chocolate with my microplane. Right on top, and then some of these white chocolate curls that I have are a little bit bigger, just to give it more depth across the top. All right, so last step is cutting our pie. So what I have is just hot water in a cup, and my knife is gone in there, so that way it's nice and warm. I'm going to wipe off any of the excess water, and then I can go through and make my cuts. So each time I make a slice, I'm going to put it back into the hot water, so that way it dissolves and kind of helps to melt off any of the pie filling that's on there. Make my next slice. And here's our finished pie. So for recipes and more information about our programs, please visit robertmorris.edu/dish, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. See you next week.